Once you've left it for a day or two to dry, it will appear lighter in color, and it's time to remove the paper plate bowl. So very carefully, you're gonna sort of peel it, bend the paper back. Sometimes it clings, so you wanna be careful if you pull too hard or if the clay went over. It can sometimes break your clay, so just be really gentle with it. And you're gonna return this, you're done with the paper bowl. Now you have a clay bowl. And you might notice that part of it got a little bit rough because when you were pushing it in, sometimes it gets a little bit stretched out. And also at the edge of where it was on the paper bowl, it tends to have a rough edge. And we don't want that to stay like that. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your sponge and some water. Now you don't wanna soak this super wet. A little bit of water goes a long way. These sponges tend to be very absorbent. So squeeze out the extra and just a little bit of water. And you're just gonna very kind of gently smooth things out. So a little bit of water and a little bit of pressure, and now all of a sudden this edge is nice and no longer rough. Notice when I'm doing this, I'm holding this in my hand. I am not leaning against the table. What you want to be really careful of is if you lean against the table while you're doing this, any pressure can cause this whole bowl to just snap. It is relatively thin, and the clay at this point is somewhat fragile. So if you're putting pressure by putting it on the table, it can and probably will break. So hold it in your hands when you're doing this, not against the table. Once you've smoothed out that edge all the way around, you can work on this. You're not going to be able to get rid of everything, but you can at least smooth it out. Now the inside of the bowl, you can do the same thing if you have a little bit of imperfections. But again, if you've got big fingerprints, you're not going to be able to totally get rid of them. This just does a little bit of the surface. Little circles is what I recommend, or back and forth in different directions. Now, right now, we took these out of the bowl that had your name on it. So there's no name on this. Now, normally I would have you carve your name. When we get to do our plates, we will be carving our name. But because these bowls will be given to someone for the charity night, you may not end up with your bowl. And I don't want some stranger having your name written down. So instead, we're going to be using a code. And the code I have to give to you. You are going to first write your class number. So your class number is either 8-5, 8-6, 8-10, or 8-11. And you're just going to carve that in with a needle tool. Now notice when you do this, don't need to press too hard, but you can carve that in. So for example, I'm going to say 8-5. Make sure it's nice and legible, but it could also be 6, or it could be 10, or it could be 11. Obviously, you're not writing all of them. I'm just giving you the options. And then you're going to use your number on my roster. So if you are the very first person, your last name starts with an A, on my roster, maybe you would be 861. If your last name starts with a Z and there's 23 people in your class, maybe you would be, 81023. So you're gonna need to look at my roster and see the number that's next to your name. It's just an alphabetical number. So you're gonna carve in your number. And that's how you're gonna identify that it's your bowl. Now, if this is dry enough, because I didn't use that much water, then I can start with underglazing if you have time. If it's really wet, if it's still that darker color, then you have to wait until next class to do the underglaze.